Bees. Bird.
Look at all those chickens.
Bats. What do all of these animals have in common? Well, these animals can fly. We made attempts to make man-made flight and recently succeeded in the early 20th century. The history of man-made aviation dates to the Chinese with the kite and has evolved into airplanes,
in the ocean 5 days after that passenger jet vanished,
helicopters,
3, 2, 1,
and more. We'll be starting with the Chinese and seeing their interpretations of flight and ending with how man flew faster than the speed of sound. This is the history of aviation. "4,000 years ago, Emperor Shun escaped from prison. He donned the work of clothes of a bird and flew." However, this is only a legend. Wan Hu used a wicker chair, put 47 rockets on it, and blasted off to the moon. Although, that was a legend, and so were the rockets. We all knew man went to the moon in 1969, and around 800 BC to 100 BC, the Chinese invented the kite. And this is not a legend. They were at first made of bamboo and silk. Children and adults alike flew kites, either for play or for work. These kind-hearted, fun objects were also used as a weapon. In the 1890s, the British Army hanged lookouts onto kites. Kites also has been used to drop explosives and propaganda. Not so fun now, aren't they? The Chinese may be wise with these kites. They were not aware of the problems of aviation, probably because they didn't know airplanes exist now. There were 3 problems with aviation, the first of which is to develop the necessary lift to get into the air. The next problem is sustaining the lift. Lastly, how to control the aircraft. With a kite, good luck. But with today's airplanes, lucky you. Before we move on, we need to identify the forces. We obviously have gravity, but that's not really a force of aerodynamics, just an average everyday force. Lift is a force of aerodynamics, however. It is the force that opposes gravity and what holds the airplane, jet, kite, whatever, into the air. Drag opposes the motion of an aircraft's motion. Thrust moves the aircraft through the air. These forces were discovered by George Cayley by using a whirling arm device. Sounds like an accident waiting to happen. Got school? Let's introduce the overachievers of this class. John Montgomery. Montgomery was born on February 15, 1858 at Yuba City, California. He started creating gliders based on bird wings, similarly to Emperor Shun's legend. In 1905, his tandem wing gliders were able to stay in the air for 20 minutes. He also had a balloon that lifted his gliders up to 4,000 feet. Sadly, his work was destroyed in an earthquake. Sadly, again, he died on October 31st, 1911, due to a gliding accident. Otto Lilienthal. Lilienthal was born on May 23, 1848 at Enklam, Prussia. Take that, Germany. He was well known and was nicknamed Flying Man. But more importantly, he was also nicknamed Father of Modern Aviation because he built gliders that had control systems. He managed to fly over 700 feet on his gliders. That is a larger distance than the amount of feet that I drive before I get upset that I am driving. He wrote a book which created interest around the world called Bird Flight as the Basis of Aviation, which didn't pique my interest. Sadly, on August 10, 1896, he died in a glider crash. Octave Chanute. Although his name sounds like a horrible music theory denier, Chanute was born on February 18, 1832 in Paris, France. He read Lilienthal's works and improved on something already revolutionary. Like Lilienthal, Chanute designed gliders, which I argue are worse than Lilienthal's. He kidnapped Augustus Herring and William Avery to test his gliders because Chanute was too old. He died on November 23rd, 1910. William Samuel Hansen and John Stringfellow. Hansen was born on May 3rd, 1812 in Nottingham, England. John Stringfellow was born in 1799 in Sheffield, England. They both met in Somerset in 1820 and both found out they had an interest in engineering and agreed to work together. Which they didn't. In 1843, they received a patent for a powered aircraft known as the Ariel. It was never built, but it was considered a masterpiece of not just aviation, but also engineering. Henson died on March 22, 1888, and Stringfellow died on December 13, 1883. Samuel Pierpont Langley. Langley was born on August 22, 1834, in Roxbury, Massachusetts. He attempted to add power to a glider, which is stupid. How can you add power to a glider without an engine? What an idiot. Oh, he did use an engine? Guess I'm the idiot. In 1886, he built and flew a steam-powered glider that flew close to a mile. In 1903, he attempted to launch an aircraft using a catapult. It dropped into a river and the government stopped funding the aerodrome. I disagree with what the government did, but Langley deserved it for polluting our rivers. Langley died on February 27, 1906. Orville and Wilbur Wright. Orville was born on August 19, 1871 in Dayton, Ohio. Wilbur was born on April 16, 1867 in Millville, Indiana. They met when they were kids because they were brothers. Duh. By themselves, they got nothing done, but together, they were able to achieve controlled, sustained, and powered flight. Wilbur, the genius he was with having 4 years of high school, created wing warping technology when messing with a box at his bike shop. Something special happened with all these advancements the brothers made from the very beginning. On December 17, 1903, at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, they flew. They flew the first airplane in existence. This plane was the Flyer. Died on January 30th, 1948. Wilbur died on May 30th, 1912. Harriet Quimby. Quimby was born on May 11th, 1875 at Arcadia, Michigan. In 1911, she would be the first woman to be a licensed pilot. This was a mistake on her part, because in the following year of 1912, she and her passenger died in a plane crash. She lost control of the plane, causing her death. She should have not lost control of the plane, and maybe she would be fine. She would be remembered for being the first woman to fly solo across the English Channel before her death. Louis Blériot. Blériot was born on July 1st, 1872 in Cambrai, France. In 1909, he crossed the English Channel. He's the first person to achieve such achievement. Sorry, Quimby, but he did it first. Blériot died on August 1st, 1936. Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh was born on February 4th, 1902 in Detroit, Michigan. He was the first person to cross the Atlantic Ocean by himself from New York to Paris. To put this in perspective, crossing the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Paris is like crossing the Atlantic Ocean from Paris to New York. This marvel costed the man 33.5 hours. He became a promoter of civil aviation and a man who has multiple controversies. Poor guy. I bet he did nothing wrong. Wait. He won a medal on behalf of Adolf Hitler? Oh well. Can't win them all. He died on August 26, 1974 in Hawaii. Lucky you. Amelia Earhart. Earhart was born on July 24th, 1897 at Atchison, Kansas. She is the first woman passenger to fly the Atlantic in 1928. But more impressively, she was the first woman to make a transatlantic solo flight in 1932. She didn't just want to fly from one continent to another, she wanted to fly from one side of the continent to the other. The long way. She attempted to fly from Oakland, California to Oakland, California, but she disappeared in 1937. She was last seen at New Guinea and presumed dead 2 years after her disappearance. Jimmy Doolittle. Jimmy, do little more work, why don't you? Doolittle was born on December 14th, 1896 at Alameda, California. He did something that crazy people would do, fly an airplane blind. Sadly, he was not actually blind or blindfolded, but that would be so much better. He took off and landed without looking at any instruments. Because of this, flight and navigation instruments were installed to planes. Doolittle died on September 27th, 1993, and judging by his life, he didn't do little. He did do a lot. Crossing the Atlantic was no joke. Our overachievers, that did, had to take a lot to consideration. There were three major problems with crossing the Atlantic at first. Firstly, there is a long distance between the Americas and the rest of the continents. Secondly, the engines were not reliable. I knew I couldn't trust those engines with my secrets. Lastly, the weather is intense. Fun fact, the Bermuda Triangle is not as dangerous as people make it. The South China Sea, of all places, is more dangerous than the Bermuda Triangle. Barnstorming, the National Air Races, and airmail. What do these three have in common? They are associated with the airplanes, of course. Barnstorming was created by ex-military pilots that flew extra and unnecessary planes. They were laid off because the US government canceled $100 million worth of airplane contracts. This almost killed aviation in the United States. However, the Barnstormers came together and revived aviation. They went to small towns and gave people rides on planes. The Barnstormers got their name because they landed on farmland. People grew interest in flying because of the Barnstormers. How would you feel if I flew into your house with a Boeing 747? That's what I thought. The National Air Races are a series of races in the United States. These races involved airplanes. Ralph Pulitzer offered a trophy to promote fast aircraft. What a genius! However, in 1925, it was the last year that the Pulitzer was awarded at the races. Some good news, in 1930, Charles Thomson established a trophy to encourage faster aircraft, faster than Pulitzer's dumb promotion. The air races helped increase the speed and how far an airplane can travel. Airmail is a department of the post office. It enabled mail to be sent from one location to another. The first route was between Washington, D.C. and New York City. Why does New York City have everything? Eventually, airmail services began in 1924 across America. Airmail led the way for civilian aircraft to be developed. There were two planes that became popular for commercial airline purposes after World War II, the Douglas DC-4 and Lockheed Constellation. Both planes sound like Elon Musk's next two children. The Douglas DC-4 was developed by Douglas Aircraft. The main function of this plane was to carry multiple passengers in one flight. How many? At least one. It's 44. We can see why this plane became popular to use. It carried a lot of passengers. The Lockheed Constellation was developed by Lockheed Corporation. The main function of the plane is like the Douglas DC-4. However, this plane can withstand pressure 10,000 feet in the air. It is also 100 miles per hour faster. The reason why this plane was popular to use is because it can withstand that kind of pressure. In 1945, Bell Aircraft explored the problems of high-speed flight. During the time they explored, they found two major problems of high-speed flight. The first problem was the aircraft would vibrate and become hard to control, like me when I'm on country roads. The second problem was the aircraft would break into pieces like my friend's leg when I threw a 15-pound bowling ball at it. In October of 1947, Chuck Yeager penetrated the sound barrier. He flew in an X-1 that was dropped from a B-29. It was like watching a nature documentary on National Geographic at 3 o'clock in the morning. He flew at 670 miles per hour at 42,000 feet in the air. The history of aviation is finally over, but I think we forgot something. But I can't put a rooster, duck, or sheep on it. Oh well, this is where this tale finally ends.